An afternoon in the summer, around 1990, a summer camp was set up deep inside a vast forest next to a small, hill-enclosed town. Its name wasn't anything grand. Locals simply called it Lakewood Campy. Surrounded by tall pine trees, a small lake lay in the middle, and a few wooden cabins stood by its shore, where children came to spend their summer holidays. Many parents in town believed their children would play safely here, learn new things, and return home happy after spending time in a natural environment. That year, about 50 children arrived. 20 of them, aged between 8 and 12, were in a separate junior group. Everything was normal: morning breakfast, swimming lessons by the lake, and songs and stories around the campfire at night. But one day in mid-July, something suddenly happened that terrified the town. One morning, the caretakers found that 12 of the 26 children in the junior group were missing. Their bags, clothes, and toys were all still inside the cabins. Only the beds were empty, the windows were open, and a strange, damp smell hung in the air. At first, it was thought they might have gone off together to play some kind of adventure game, but hours passed, and there was no sign of them. On searches of the lake shore, the forest, and even the nearby hiking trails turned up no trace. The news spread throughout the town. Parents rushed to the camp. Police, local volunteer teams, and search parties with dogs all began combing the forest. Flashlights shone through the trees all night. Boats were launched on the lake, but the children were nowhere to be seen. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Still there was no sign. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. The town was gripped by fear and grief. Lakewood Camp was shut down. No one dared go near it. Many said it was a cursed place. Some claimed there was an old burial ground deep in the forest, and it was taking revenge. Others whispered that perhaps some unknown person had taken the children. But the question remained: how could someone take so many children without a sound or a traces? Time went on. The parents held on to hope, believing one day news would come, a letter would arrive, a clue would be found. But a year passed and nothing happened. The police file gathered dust. Only every July, the townsfolk would remember the missing children. 3 decades passed. The town changed. A new generation grew up. The site of Lakewood Camp was abandoned. The broken cabins decayed from storms and rain, and the lake shore was overgrown with grass. The new generation only knew the story that one summer, a group of children had suddenly vanished. But in the early 2020s, something suddenly happened at the old town post office that stunned everyone. Postman John, who had worked in the town for over 30 years, was organizing the Daily Mail as usual. He suddenly found a large package inside an old locker at the back of the office. Out of curiosity, he opened it. Inside were a bunch of envelopes. Each one had letters that looked like a child's handwriting, and on each envelope was a name, the names of the 12 missing children. A shiver ran down his spine. He ran to call the postmaster. Soon the news spread throughout the town. The envelopes were opened carefully. Inside were indeed letters written by children. They were dated July 1990. It was as if they had written the letters just before they disappeared. But how they had suddenly appeared at the post office after all these years was beyond anyone's comprehension. Reading the letter's contents sent shivers down everyone's spines. One letter read, "Someone is calling us, we're scared." Another said, "We see lights in the forest. I think they are going to take us." Someone else had written, "If we don't come back, please tell our parents we love them." As investigators read the letters one by one, they noticed a similar theme in all of them. Some unknown force or entity was calling them deeper into the woods. But the most bizarre thing was that the envelope paper felt brand new. as if it had been written yesterday. Yet, the postmark clearly showed the date 1990. Scientists tested the paper and the ink, but they could not explain how these letters had suddenly appeared after so many years. Panic spread through the town again. The old parents, who were still alive, broke down in tears. Their children had been missing for 3 decades, and suddenly their voices seemed to echo on paper. Meanwhile, some journalists came to cover the story. They filmed the letters and the story spread across the country. Various theories emerged. Some said it was a conspiracy, that someone had fabricated it. Others claimed it was something supernatural. But in the hearts of the townsfolk, the old wound had reopened. Many argued that the letters proved the children had been trapped somewhere, maybe alive for some time. Perhaps they had written for help, but if so, why had no one seen these letters for all these years? Some parents, gathering courage, went back into the forest to see the old camp's ruins. There, they noticed something strange in the wall of an old wooden cabin by the lake. There were small scratches, as if made by children's hands, and next to the scratches were a few names which matched the names of the missing children. The townsfolk realized the mystery lay hidden there. Something strange had happened deep inside that forest at Lakewood Camp, something no one had ever known, and that truth was slowly coming to light. The letters were taken from the post office to the police department. Everyone read them with care. Each letter was in a child's handwriting, sometimes with shaky letters, sometimes written in a hurry as if they had written them in a state of panic. The police archive file for the 1990 Lakewood case, filled with frustration and question marks, was reopened. Detective Martin, who had been a new recruit at the time, was the first assigned to this case 30 years ago. Now an old man nearing retirement, he rushed back upon hearing the news. A strange light gleamed in his eyes. I knew they couldn't have just vanished into thin air. As he read the letters, he found some common threads. The phrase "lights in the woods" appeared in almost all of them. Someone wrote, "Lights are moving in the forest, like they are calling us." Another wrote, "Lights are floating outside our cabin. We are scared." Martin wondered, what did they mean by lights? Lanterns, fire, or something else entirely? One letter, in particular, caught his attention. It read, "We keep having the same dream. Someone is standing outside the window at night, and their eyes are glowing. We don't know if they are human or something else." Everyone was stunned by this line. The parents cried, and the journalists asked more questions. But the most mysterious part was the postmark found on the envelopes. It clearly read Lakewood, July 1990. Yet no letters had reached the post office at that time. How was that possible? The police called in the forensics team. They examined the paper and ink. The report stated, "Both the paper and ink are original from the 90s. These are not modern copies." But even they couldn't explain why all the letters had suddenly appeared together after so many years. A kind of panic spread through the town. Locals didn't want to go out at night. Many said that there might be some strange force in the forest that had become active again after 3 decades. At this time, one of the parents, a woman named Mary, suddenly claimed that she had been seeing her son in her dreams for several nights. Her son was telling her, "Mom, come to the lake. We are still here." At first, everyone thought she was disoriented by grief, but when 2 other parents had almost identical dreams, the matter seemed different. Martin decided they needed to go back to the old camp. This time he was joined by the forensics team, journalists, and some volunteers. They went deep into the forest and reached the remains of the old campy, broken cabins, moldy walls, and an eerie silence by the dark waters of the lake. A heavy scent seemed to hang in the air. They entered the cabin where the scratches had been found before. This time, in the light of the flashlights, they saw more writing, very faint, almost erased, but still visible. It read, "We are being taken. The light is coming." Everyone shivered. It felt as if the children had left a final message on the wall. Suddenly, a member of the forensics team screamed. In a corner of the cabin floor, inside a gap in the wood, they found some papers. Removing the dust and dirt, they saw that these were also letters, but they had not been sent to the post office. They were hidden in the cabin itself. One was opened, and it began, "We are being held here. The door is locked. We hear voices deep in the woods. If anyone finds this, know we are not alone." Another one read, "We don't know if it's day or night now. When the light comes, time stops. We can't sleep." After reading this, the investigators realized that this was not just a case of missing children. There was something in it that was beyond human comprehension. Night fell. The group didn't want to stay in the camp, but Martin insisted. "This is the night to know the truth. If the light comes, we walk to see it with our own eyes." They lit a campfire. The surroundings were dark, with only the lake water occasionally shimmering in the webs. Everyone was silent. A little after midnight, a strange spear of white-blue light suddenly floated up from the lake. It moved slowly, then suddenly flashed and disappeared. Everyone was speechless. The forensics team's camera managed to record it, but the light mysteriously remained a blurry shadow in the video. Just then, a woman's voice echoed from the direction of the forest. "Take us back." Everyone was startled. The parents started crying. Some, frightened, wanted to run away. But Martin calmly said, "That is the call. That is probably the force that took the children." After seeing that light in the middle of the night, a kind of panic and disbelief was visible in everyone's eyes. Some were saying this must be a natural phenomenon. It may be a fireball or methane gas. But those who had witnessed the event first and felt it was completely unnatural. Detective Martin told the teen to calm down. "We must not be afraid. This light is the key that is connected to the mystery of the children's disappearance." They stayed up all night at the camp, but the light did not return. As dawn broke, everyone was exhausted. They returned to the town, but the questions in their minds remained more profound. The next morning, some of the people who had been at the camp started talking about strange dreams. A journalist said, "I dreamed of small hands hitting the window pane." A member of the forensics team said, "I heard many children screaming together, 'Get us out.' Could this be just a coincidence? Or had the night spent at the camp imprinted something on their minds?" Martin sat down to read the letters again. He tried to understand the children's last feelings through every line. That's when he noticed a strange symbol drawn on one of the letters. It looked like a circle with 3 lines cutting through it. He thought it might be just a child's doodle, but a few days later, while at the Old Town Library, he was reading local history and was astonished to see the exact same symbol drawn in a folktale about this area from a century ago. The folktale said that strange entities called Hollow Watchers once lived deep in this forest. They were said to lure children with their voices into the lights of the forest. Those who went never returned. The symbol's circle was supposedly the door to that power, where the rules of time and earth did not apply. Martin's heart pounded. If the symbol drawn in the children's letter matched this old folktale, then perhaps the story had come true 3 decades ago. He shared this news with the rest of the team. Some laughed it off. "This is just superstition." But the parents began to believe. For them, this was the last hope. If the entities had indeed taken the children, maybe they were still somewhere. Meanwhile, after the letters were made public, Researchers from all over the country began to arrive in town. Some said it was a time slip, a kind of time loop that people get trapped in and can't get out of. Others said it was the work of aliens. But Mary, the mother who kept seeing her son in her dreams, suddenly screamed one night. She said her son had told her in a dream, "Mom, come to the bottom of the lake. The light is there." Hearing this, Martin decided the bottom of the lake had to be examined. A team of divers was brought in. They descended into the dark water of the lake. After searching for an hour, one of the divers suddenly screamed into his walkie-talkie, "We've found something." Everyone waited in suspense. After a while, the divers surfaced. They held a rusty tin box. It was retrieved from the water. When the box was opened, they saw more letters inside. They were completely soaked, but the writing was still legible. One began, "We are now under the water." Everyone was speechless. How was this possible? Were the children really somewhere at the bottom of the lakes? Another letter said, "The light is pulling us. We can't fight. If anyone finds this box, know that we are lost within time." After reading these letters, the whole town was filled with discussion again. One group said they are not alive. The other group said they are still somewhere, we just can't reach them. Only one question revolved in Martin's mind. What was this light, and why had it returned after 3 decades? One night, as he sat alone in his office looking at the files, that blue-white light suddenly flashed outside his window. He ran outside, but the light disappeared. However, a wet piece of paper was lying on the ground. On the paper, written in shetty letters, were the words, "Can you hear us?" A shiver ran down Martin's spine. Martin stood on the dark street holding the piece of paper. With a trembling hand he read the words again and again. "Can you hear us?" It was as if someone was speaking from a place between time and reality. The next day, he decided there was no time to lose. The mystery of Lakewood Camp had to be fully uncovered. The forensics team, researchers, and parents all gathered again by the lake. Mary said in a tearful voice, "I can still hear my son's voice. They are asking for help." Martin looked at the lake and said, "Tonight, we will make our last attempt." As evening fell, a strange silence descended. Even the forest birds seemed to have stopped. The group sat by the lake shore with torches lit. An hour passed, but nothing happened. Exactly after midnight, the same blue-white light appeared again on the surface of the lake. This time the light did not just float. It slowly began to expand. Waves formed in the middle of the lake, as if a door were opening. Everyone stared in stunned silence. Suddenly, a few figures appeared on the water, small shadows of children. Some were waving, some were crying. Mary screamed, "That's my son." The other parents also began to cry, but the figures were hazy in the dim light, as if trapped inside the water. Their mouths were moving, but no sound came out. The forensics team tried to record it, but the footage only showed a blurry light like fog. Martin, mustering courage, walked toward the lake's edge. He shouted loudly, "Can you hear us? We will bring you back." At that moment the light became even brighter. The air grew heavy. The entire group was pulled into a strange sensation. It felt as if time was stopping, and the surroundings were becoming blurry. Suddenly, the whole lake was plunged into darkness. For a few moments, no one could see anything, and when the light returned, they were all astonished to see a few children standing on the lake shore. Some were crying, some were looking around in fear. They were just as they had been in the summer of 1990. Even their clothes hadn't changed, as if not a single moment had passed for them. The parents ran to hug them, and the forest was filled with the mixed sound of crying and laughter. But everyone noticed something. Not all the children were there. 12 had gone missing, but only 6 had returned. Where were the others? one of the returned children said in a frightened voice. We were all together, but when the light pulled us, we got separated. Some of us stayed on the other side. Martin asked, "What do you mean by the other side?" The boy, crying, said, "We don't know. They said that when time was up, we had to go. The light held us. We were running and then suddenly some of us disappear." All the returned children were admitted to the hospital. The doctors were surprised to see that their bodies had remained that of an 8 to 10-year-old, even though 30 years had passed in the outside world. For them, time had seemingly stopped. News spread across the country. Some called it a miracle, others a test by aliens, and some said it proved that time slips were real. But what happened to the other 6 missing children? No one ever found the answer. Martin wrote the last line in his notebook. "We may have brought some children back, but half the mystery remains unsolved. The light will return one day. Maybe the other 6 will come back then, or we ourselves will get lost." Although the townsfolk found partial relief, the lake at Lakewood Camp is still covered in a strange silence. At night, some people say, small voices can be heard from the water. Take us back, and then everything goes dark again.